Beautiful. So welcome to module 2, grand design of the Discover You, Adjust Your Self-Perception course. So just to recap, so we're uncovering our contractual transformations, and that requires us to adjust our self-perception. So the steps are archetypes, design, adjust, not adjust. The acronym is ADJUST, which is archetypes, design, journaling, unpacking, selection, and table. And tonight we are starting to look at, and this is not a conversation that can be done in, definitely can't be done in 15 minutes. It probably can't be done in 15 years. This is definitely a lifelong journey to unpack what the grand design means. I don't proclaim to have all of the answers in this. I don't even proclaim that when you speak to me tomorrow, I will still agree with what I share in this. It is my current perception of the grand design, which is continually evolving. So if we look at the grand design, takes account that there are multiple dimensions in play and that there is no singular big truth on a cosmic level, rather many experiences of truth that we can access in many forms, which is definitely what I'm living. So in this moment, to the best of my ability, this is my truth right now. I'm speaking as openly and as authentically and as congruently as I can muster. And yet somehow, and I hate to admit it, I am a flawed human being and I make mistakes and I have no idea what the grand design is. So there's both of these in play of I've got some wisdom that I'm going to share and I really know fuck all, and why would you listen to me? So just find your medium between the two. And like I say, tomorrow I may change my mind. I may upgrade the video in time. I may leave it there because as we go on our journeys through our life, we need to break down our misconceptions piece by piece. And so this video right now may be exactly what you need right now. It may not be what I believe in a week or 2 or 10. And yet it's still, the message is relevant and pertinent right now. Does that make sense, Christine? Yeah, beautiful, getting nods. So I've got my beautiful live audience with me who I'm grateful for. But if you're watching the recording, then feel free to come into the Facebook group and ask any questions or bring it to a one-on-one session, wherever it is that we're connecting, that you've got access to this. So just, yeah, once again, just going to bring back that there is no singular truth. There are many opportunities for experience. It's kind of like the opposite of all roads lead to Rome. There's many roads lead away from Rome. So all roads lead to Rome, but there's many ways to leave Rome and go on a journey. There's many ways to get between point A and point B. And we just need to be open to, and the more we're open to the possibilities and the opportunities, and that there's less right and wrong and more in this moment and functional and dysfunctional, and even that starts to limit us. It's what works to create the result we desire in this moment, and depending on our result will depend on what's going to have that come through. Any questions on that, Christy? Getting a thumbs up or a...
No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So when we start to look at the different sort of layers of truth, and I wish I'd put in the image. It'll be in the Facebook group, but there's an image that I see pop up on Facebook every now and then because I'm surrounded by coaches, and you've got 2 people looking at a number. And so the person on one side is saying it's a 6 and the person on the other side is saying it's a 9. So they're both looking at the same thing from different angles. From one angle, it looks like a 9. From one angle, it looks like a 6. So what we want to acknowledge is that depending on the angle that we are looking at and looking from, and how near or far we are. So if you blindfold 6 people and give them each a portion and I'm not cutting up the elephant, don't mishear me. I mean, like, there's a whole elephant who's safe and unharmed, and one person is given the trunk, and one person is given a foot, and one person is given an ear, and one person is given a tail. And maybe I should have only had 4 people because now I've run out of parts of the elephant. One person is sitting on top of the elephant. Now we've got 5. Each one of them, while they're all having an experience of the elephant, it's going to be a different experience. So the person holding the trunk will say, this is quite flexible, it's moving, it's somewhat hollow. The person holding the ear is going to have something that's large and flat and quite pliable. Maybe it's velvety. I don't know what an elephant's ear feels like. I feel like I need to go riding elephants now. The person sitting on top of the elephant is going to feel the solidness underneath them. The person holding the tail, I've got a vision, and again, I have no idea what an elephant's tail feels like, but like of a fluffy kind of, the end of the tail, I'm thinking like stuffed elephants that my kids have had. I'm fairly confident that a real elephant's tail probably doesn't feel like that. But imagining that, and then the person with the leg or the foot has this solid sort of trunk in play and so everyone's having an experience of the elephant, but depending on which part they're holding on to, and they're all blindfolded, they can't see the elephant, they're going to describe it differently. So the angle and the perception that we're coming from is going to shape our experience. Now, all of those examples that I just gave of describing the elephant were the literal observation. We could then go to, what do you think? So what they felt, because they were blindfolded, what they felt was what they described. Then they can start to imagine what it is that they've got. So the person with the trunk might think they've got a fire hose. The person with the tail might think they've got the fluffy animal, assuming that my perception of what an elephant's tail feels like is anywhere near accurate, which I'm fairly confident it's not. The person holding the leg might feel that they've got a tree. The person sitting on top, my own imagination's getting stretched now. Can you see how that there's all these different, so there's the literal observation, well, I felt this in my hand, like I touched it, which I know is not under there. And it's the physical feel, it's the physical experience, the sensational observations. And then we get to the evaluative and the imagination. From that, we then get to the inferential and the interpretation. So I saw and I heard and I thought and I felt, and from that I deducted and I reasoned. And I get there's a lot in this, so feel free to pause me if you need to ask questions, Christy. So the perceptions, and I'm just trying to remember how I got to this slide because I got consumed by the elephants. There's no forms of truth. Just recap where I was coming from. So that our truth that we see, or what we perceive as truth, also known as our beliefs or our experiences and our interpretations, is going to be highly shaped by our perceptions. And the more we can tap into the perception that we're coming from, the angle that we're coming from, okay, was that an observation or was that a mind read? Did we imagine that? Or was it deducted? And the deducted is shaped by our past experiences and what we think and what we saw. So they kind of all link together. So we see something, we think or feel something, and then we create a reason for it. Now, sometimes we do that really well, though very rarely. More often than not, our deductions and our reasoning and the connections that we're making are inaccurate. We like to think that we are high, and I love to think that I am highly able to look at stuff and make accurate deductions and put together puzzles and link patterns. I indulge in that for myself so much. And then I'll be doing a puzzle. I'm like, this piece has got to go here. And it doesn't. My deduction is off. Or no, that piece can't possibly go there. And I'll try it anyway, and it will fit. So more often than not, our deductions and our reasoning is inaccurate because we're coming from a logical perspective rather than a interpretive perspective. And that's something we'll go into more, the difference between the logical and the interpretive in the course. But I know you and I have discussed that already on some level, Christy. So any questions about these three levels? So the different angles, is there any information you feel that we're missing at this point?
No, so what I'm hearing is that it's the meaning that we apply to something based on our previous experiences, and we've placed meaning on those previous experiences. So that's shaping how we see the current situation and how we, I guess, deduct what that is, which has a bunch of inaccuracies based on the meaning that we've placed on everything else before it, essentially. Is that?
Yeah, it will. And the meanings and the angle that we're looking at. So if we're looking at the 6 and we know that a 6 looks like this, so we see the 6, we think that it's a 6, we know that it's a 6. From this angle, it's a 6. And so we deduce that it's a 6. But the person standing on the other side sees the 9, knows that it's a 9 based on past experiences, and deduces that it's a 9. Now, what then generally happens is the person that sees it's a 6 says that deduces that the other person is wrong, instead of reasoning and connecting. You're looking at this from a different perspective. Another example of this would be years ago, and I know you've heard this story 1,000 times, Christy. Years ago, my husband and I were in the middle of a massive argument, and I was in screechy, banshee mode, which doesn't happen as often now, but still can occur. And it's like, you don't support me. And somewhere there's this little angel pops up on my shoulder and says, what does support mean to you? And we both sat down. I stepped back because he, of course, came back with, of course I support you. And what do you mean I don't support? And we were both, it's a 6, it's a 9. We were both coming at this angle. And we sat down and we wrote out, well, what does support mean to you and what does support mean to me? And from the ability to see the other person's perspective, we were able to identify that through his map, what he was saying was support. He was doing everything on his list. I'm like, of course you do that. You do that really well. You do that all the time. And none of them mean support to me. And he looked down my list. He's like, I get why you don't feel supported, because they didn't match. So sometimes we just want to shift our position. We want to, instead of just looking at what we can see in front of us, we want to take a look around the entire room. What's behind us? What's underneath us? What's above us? So that's that shift from just what we can see to, well, what else is here on the physical realm? And then of course we can go higher up and look in and sort of look for the energetic realms as well. I feel like I've done that significantly. I'm open to, if there's a question that you've got, Christy, or anything you want to add or share around this.
No, that was thorough.
We'll move to the next place. If anyone's watching the recording and needs to ask any questions, please come into the group, ask questions, bring it to your, because there will be live Q&A calls for most of you. Bring it to those and ask the questions. So one of the biggest obstacles when it comes to these transformational contracts is the way that, and I apologize for the slides moving everywhere. I moved forward and then realized I had a point that I wanted to bring to this. Is the assumption that our transformational contracts or our fate or our destiny or the grand design links to the literal and links to what we'll be able to see and hear and read and touch and experience, and that those things are predetermined, and they're not. So what we're going to see and hear, what we're going to be able to think and feel, what we're able to deduce and reason and connect the dots with, all of that is a world that is not connected, that is connected and not connected at the same time. And I get that contrast is tricky to grasp to the physical. So our sacred contracts or our transformational contracts are agreements that were made preconception, preconceived ideas, so that we can understand, experience, feel, and explore who we already are. And I'm just going to read, this is the back of, so these two books, I highly encourage them. In the group, there'll be the links, and in the course, I don't know how well they're going to show up. But so the little soul and the sun, which is the one that's there, and then the little soul in the earth, I'm a somebody. And I love that. I'm somebody. It's not I'm anybody. It's not I'm anything. I'm just somebody. And I'm just going to read the back of this. So this is describing the previous book. This is the sequel to it. And the little soul in the earth, I don't mind, but the one that I highly recommend is Little Soul in the Sun. You'll find it on YouTube. If you're looking for a guided meditation, I highly recommend it as a guided meditation, and just sit and let the words wash over. And this little soul, so this is, once upon a time, there was a little soul. And this little soul wanted to understand forgiveness. Except the little soul didn't want to just understand forgiveness. The little soul wanted to experience forgiveness and know what it really felt like to forgive another. So God helped in the best of all the possible ways by putting the little soul in a body and allowing it to come and experience all the magic that the world has to offer. That's our transformational contracts. It's so far beyond what we experience in the physical world and above and around, and yet it is only through the experience of the physical world that we can fulfill these contracts. So to experience forgiveness, we have to experience pain. That's a physical world sensation. And the example in the book, so it's a newborn baby in the little soul in the earth, and she feels cold. And the nurse or the midwife, I can't remember what they call her in the book, but she's forgotten to add warm water. And the guardian angel says to this baby, now you have an opportunity to forgive. And the baby, of course, has forgotten this agreement. The moment we walk through the door coming into this world, we forget what the agreements were. And 40 years down the track, whatever it is, 30, 20, 50, 80, whatever, we start to think, what were the agreements that we made? What is it that we came to this earth to experience? What are we looking for? And maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's compassion, maybe it's surrender, maybe it could be almost anything, but it's an experiential thing. It's not we're destined to, or we're fated to, more accurately, have certain experiences. We're here to encounter and engage in something that allows us to experience and explore who we already are, the all of us that we are. And that may mean encountering the darkness. To grasp more of this, listen to the little soul in the sun, and you'll hear that context. So no matter what, we will be given the opportunities to fulfill our contractual transformation, an opportunity to experience who we already are and what we came into this world. And that may mean somebody else experiencing a part of themselves that's a little bit darker or a little bit heavier or a little bit lighter, or any of those. And the distinction between fate and destiny. So fate is what happens to us and is passive. So we wait for the world to give us the opportunities to fulfill the contractual transformation. We wait for things to happen to us, and we've forgotten that they're happening for us to have these experiences. Our destiny is what we do with those experiences and to engage in them more readily. So one of my contractual transformations, one of my things that I'm fairly certain that my little soul said to God or the universe, coordinator or whatever we want to call it. I'm okay with the word God, but whatever it was, this agreement that was made before was that I was coming here to experience surrender. And there are a number of moments I can think of in my life where I had to surrender. And there are a number of moments in my life, once I worked out that that was the journey that I was on, that I deliberately set myself up to go and surrender. So there was a car accident that I was in years ago, and I surrendered to the, I want a better word than buoyancy of the car. And I just surrendered to whatever was happening in that. Where I realized I stepped into it as a destiny choice is when I chose to go skydiving. So the car accident was fate. The car accident I had no control over. What I did have control over was how I reacted in the moment to the accident. Skydiving was not, well, it was fate because it was placed in front of me. There was a coaching conversation I had with someone else about their fear of heights, and her home play ended up being to go skydiving. And I got off the call and went, there's something here for me as well. So that it was placed in front of me, but I could have got off the call and gone, there's something here for me as well, but I'm going to go and wash the dishes, or I'm going to go and do something else, and just ignore that call to action. But I heard it and I booked in and I went skydiving, and there was lots of pieces in that. So embracing fear was what I thought I was doing. But in hindsight, what I was really doing was embracing surrender. Literally handing myself over to the care of someone else. They've done all the prep work. I have no idea what they've done with the ropes and the survival instincts when you're sitting, I can't remember how high up we were, 10,000 feet or whatever it was, looking down, and they're pushing you out of the plane. Like the survival instincts kick in at that point and you go, hang on, what am I doing here? And there is this moment of just pure surrender. And so that would be an example of, so the car accident was fate, and there was my response to it in the moment was the destiny. There was also this opportunity that I created for myself of going skydiving. So I know this is a massive topic. Again, I don't think we can do it justice in such a short conversation. Were there any questions bubbling up for you, Christy, specifically around this that you want to touch on before we move on to the next slide?
No, I think just what's coming up for me is how sometimes we get attached to how we think it should happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it often doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so the more attached to this, and as we move forward and we start to look at wheels and casting into like fate, destiny wheels and the transformations, which will come further in the course, it is that letting go of attachment. So I want to experience surrender, but I only want to do it if you can guarantee me I'll be safe. I'll get, what's the name to edit that out for me? Sorry. Yeah, so we put conditions on how we want to have the experience. Well, I want to experience forgiveness, but not too much forgiveness. Like, don't make it too bad a thing that person does me. Just a little bit of forgiveness. It doesn't work that way. When we start putting conditions on it, the old saying of if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Like, it just, the more specifically, and this is where we've got to move away from the literal to the metaphysical. And I'm going to misquote it poorly, but Hamlet's voice is in my, it's like, there are more things on heaven and earth than are in your mind, Horatio. I apologize to anyone who's a literary person and actually knows what that quote is, because I'm fairly confident I just butchered it. But there is so much more to life and our existence than what we can conceive of. And there is so much more. So if we start putting conditions, we're putting a logical, linear process in place. And that may not be what we need. And it comes back to the surrender, but it comes back to letting go of that attachment of security, letting go of the attachment of control, letting go of the attachment of safety, letting go of the attachment of certainty. All right, God, well, I'll do this thing for you that you've called me to do if you lay out every step. all right, I'll start my business when I know exactly who I'm going to be working with. And we want to know the answers before we've taken the action. I'll open this jigsaw puzzle and I'll do this jigsaw puzzle when I know where every piece goes before I've even opened the box. And so often that's the attachment that we have, is this need to know and this drive to be right and understand before we've done anything. And it just doesn't work that way. So I love that contribution, Christy, just the play in that. And it is a let go and tapping into what it is that we need to let go of. And so fate tends to violate the most basic law of the grand design. It buys into that belief that life is happening to us and not for us. The road to destiny is therefore shaped around the misconceptions that we're willing to give up, the limitations, the weird beliefs, the attributes that we picked up, the standards or the expectations are all being released to allow ourselves to make new decisions and acknowledge the journey that we're on. So on the contrast to surrender is control. So for me to truly surrender, I've got to give up control. And some days I wouldn't even say some days, some moments I succeed in that. And most moments I don't. But that's how I respond in those moments where I know, and I noticed it earlier this afternoon. I stepped into this moment of demanding and controlling, and I'm like, there it is. And it was a moment where I would love to say that I then stopped and I did it differently. But the truth is that I noticed it and went, there it is. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I just continued down that path.
I also find it ironic that someone might set up a thing of, okay, I want to experience surrender or embrace surrender. I'm going to create this experience where I can experience surrender. Like, I'm going to control this experience so I can surrender to it. No.
We all have these weird moments. It was the same when I was studying intuition. Like, I just want to follow my intuition. Give me the 7 steps to follow my intuition. You tell me how I follow my intuition. And the ridiculousness of that is hilarious. We're all doing it on some level. And there are moments where we will step into this other version of ourselves and have that transformation and access what it is that we came here to experience. The other piece that I want to add on this is that, so fate in some ways, I want a better word than predestined, but pre-scheduled, preordained. They are the ideas. So they're the preconceived ideas, the ideas before conception or the commencement of the event. So anything that's preconceived, we come in with, this is how I want this to play. We're living in fate in those moments. Destiny is when we step into our ability to conceive new ideas and engage with and transform our perceptions and therefore our experiences in the moment. So fate has us sticking with what we think we know, buying into the misconceptions. The misconception that anything out there can influence our internal world. The misconception that there is no reason for anything. There's so many misconceptions that we could go into. Whereas destiny is seeing truth and it fits with the natural order of things. There is always a cause and effect. There is always choice. And where those choice points are shape how conscious we are with those choice points, whether we're just giving in and allowing it to happen to us and we think that it's happening to us, or whether we notice the circumstances and acknowledge I still have, may not feel like I have a choice, but I have a choice here. And how am I going to engage in this circumstance? So our choice points are scattered throughout our timeline. So this is a very broad overview picture of probably some other people's as well, but my timeline very loosely. So there's a location that I was born into. So that's a preconceived choice. We choose, and I don't know if it is or not really, but I feel like there potentially is this choice. If we buy into the agreements, I was placed in a position in this earth to live out those agreements. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, but it works for me. And this is where we come back to what is truth. Truth is what serves us in the moment. So the location, the parents that I had, the friends and siblings that I had, the education that I undertook, the house that I moved into, the babies that I had, the man that I married. I'm trying to find the right word, and I'm like, where did that go? So yeah, the man that I married and when I got married, which you can note is after the first baby. There were then more babies which are missing from this, which then leads me to this Zoom conversation is what that last little graphic is. So there's all of these choice points that lead us to this moment. And some of them are big and some of them are small or seemingly small. And not necessarily. So the ripple effect of what can seem like little choices can flow on quite considerably. So I think there's an episode of Doctor Who, not I think, I know there is an episode of Doctor Who where it's the one with Donna Noble in that season. I think it's season 3, it might be season 4, I can't remember. And there's someone comes back and changes the course of her. So she's sitting at an intersection. It's the most mundane of moments with her mum, and she's fighting with the mum about what she should do as a career. And the mother's telling her to go somewhere, and something happens. And the mum's, I can't remember if it's turn left or turn right, but whatever it is, something happens and there's an accident. And instead of turning the way that she turned originally, which took her down these series of events that got her to meeting the doctor, she turns the other way and she doesn't meet the doctor, and it goes off into this weird parallel universe as Doctor Who does. And she doesn't meet the doctor dies, and then all of the things that the doctor would have done that's played out in the series beforehand don't happen. And the world basically goes into this chaos, and the universe is collapsing, and one of the other characters crosses over and they rewind it and they take it back through time. But those seemingly insignificant choices, the choice to change our shoes and miss the train. Think of the movie Sliding Doors, and she's running, I can't remember, it was a child gets in a way or something. And in one, she gets on the train, she goes home, she finds a boyfriend cheating and all of this kind of stuff. And in the other, she misses the train and it plays out in a whole different sequence. In the end, though, she's still, so the fate of realizing that the boyfriend is cheating still occurs, and she still meets the guy that she'd met. So those two, so the door moment changes the timeline, it doesn't change the trajectory. It just takes her a little bit longer to get there. That's a really good movie actually for this. Christy's nodding, so I'm guessing from that you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, you're watching the recording, watch it, because I think that will just give you some insights into those. And that was not a conscious choice on her part, but there are moments where we do make that conscious choice. I'm going to change the dress. There's an episode in Grey's Anatomy, and Izzy, one of the doctors, just misses her, and I apologize for the spoilers that I'm giving in this. They're all phenomenally old. None of them are new. I'm not watching new movies, but she misses a significant moment with her partner. She's like, if I hadn't changed my dress 3 times, I'd have been there. And she beats us. That moment of the choices of changing our dress, and sometimes that works, that we miss something and it's awful, and sometimes that works that we miss something and it's wonderful. I remember reading stories of the Granville train accident, and there were people that would normally have been on that train. I get goosebumps thinking about it. People that would have normally been on the train, and I can't remember how many people were killed in that accident. There was a bridge fell, or I can't even remember what happened exactly, but the number of people that would normally have been on that train that missed it for some reason, like their car keys were missing and they left 5 minutes late and they then got on the next train, or the child vomited on them and they missed the, like there's all of these seemingly annoying, like I can't find my car keys, the world is out to get me, and yet maybe the world is out to support you in that moment so that you're not on the train, or maybe you are destined to be on the train, or fated to be on the train. There's all of these points. So for home play this after this session, you'll find in the online course a list of questions in a handout, and I want you to just start thinking about life's key choice points. And these can be big or small. So one of mine, when I do this exercise, there was a moment as a young child, I was probably in year 2, and I need the quotation, my boyfriend, we were in year 2, I don't think I even kissed the kid, but my boyfriend, I put my bag away, and whether I hadn't put it all the way in, or whether it was my choice or someone else's choice that led to this moment, I don't know. I really don't recall. But I put my bag away and it had got kicked out, and he was a bad boy. He was, so he's sitting right up. We had a lino area, which was like our mud room kind of stuff. And then there was the carpeted area, and he wasn't allowed on the carpeted area because he just was a bad boy. And I'm now giggling at myself as I'm telling this, because I'm realizing this pattern of choosing the bad boys, but that's a whole other conversation. But so my bag ended up kicked out from the cupboards to his, at his feet. And he picked it up and he's screaming, he's throwing his temper tantrum because this bag is in his spot. And he's obviously, if I look back on it with adult eyes, he's been rejected, he's been shunned, he's been put in this, and then there's this bag and it's invading his space. And based on what I know from our teenage years, his home life was just appalling. So I can come with compassion for it now, but my, 8-year-old self, my boyfriend didn't know it was my bag and was screaming and blaming me. And there was a choice for me in that moment in how I responded. And I remember responding with a level of compassion. So instead of screaming back, which is what I wanted to do, I just wanted to, I don't even know if it was compassion, it may have just been suppression on my part or something, but I wanted to scream back and I bit my tongue and I didn't. And I just walked up, I calmly took my bag and I put it away. And that choice point, so that's one of my choice points. But it's a seemingly small moment, except that it's a big moment, if that makes sense. You can look back through just the choice points of today. So when the alarm went off, did you hit snooze or did you get up? So look for the big choices and look for the small choices and the questions that you're going to ask. So what was the choice? Why did you make that choice? And I really want you just to explore, and I'll put these in a handout for you, Christy, so you've got them. What was it that had you make that choice? And I really want you to explore the voice in your head and which voice that is. So if you've done any archetype work before and you're aware of them, start thinking, okay, was it the victim or the saboteur or the prostitute or the other survival archetype? Its name has just eluded me. The child. Was it a more mature archetype that you've got in you? What character made that choice? If you were in a movie, what would the character that made that choice, who would the character be? So why did you make it? What aspects of yourself did you give up by making this choice? So in that instance with my year 2 boyfriend, I gave up my voice. Like I did not speak. I gave up my needs. I just completely gave up myself. What aspects of you were required to make this choice? So a massive amount of self-discipline came through in that moment. A massive amount of self-control to not just go up and punch him, which is what I wanted to do, but I didn't. So there was this self-control. And so there's kind of the flip. I gave up my voice, but I also really tapped into being able to bring control to myself. What aspects of you are allowed to shine because of this choice? Did this choice amplify or destroy misconceptions? So that moment in year 2 definitely amplified misconceptions. I am misunderstood. No one cares about me. Nobody understands. Like, even my boyfriend doesn't respect my stuff. No one respects my stuff. There would be other choices that we've made that amplify and step into more of us and the versions of us that does align with truth. And then which of your team of champions was driving this choice, which we already covered. So that's the home play. I look forward to diving into a call with those of you watching the recording. Christy and I are going to dive into that now off this recording in a moment. And I look forward to you sharing your experience of filling out the questions. So feel free to share your answers to the questions, but I'm more interested in your experience of answering the questions. What did you discover about you? What do you discover are some of the common points in those choices? So as you look at those choices, what are some of the common things that you've given up? What are some of the common things that you've been invited to embrace that you have or haven't? That's what we're looking for. Christy, is there anything you want to add before I end the recording, or is that feeling complete for now? Feeling complete?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Beautiful. So we'll stop that.